Both parties should be able to unite for a great rebuilding of America's crumbling infrastructure. This is not an option. This is a necessity.
So much of America needs to be rebuilt. We've got crumbling roads and bridges, a power grid that wastes too much energy. Democratic and Republican administrations invested in great projects that benefited everybody.
This Congress must act to encourage conservation, promote technology, build infrastructure, and it must act to increase energy production at home so America is less dependent on foreign oil.
Notice how the crowd behind the president gets more and more diverse every year. That's progress. Biden's pitch comes at a time when the country is slowly emerging from forced hibernation due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This election of Georgia is no coincidence. Almost a month ago, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp signed one of the most restrictive voter suppression laws in the country after a diverse coalition of voters handed Democrats the keys to the White House and the Senate. Joining me now is Aaron Haynes, editor-at-large for the 19th, and Say Ufot, CEO of the New Georgia Project, and Adrian Elrod, former senior aide on the Biden-Harris and Clinton-Kaine campaigns. Nsay, I'll begin with you. Joe Biden makes a beeline for Georgia right after his speech to a joint session of Congress. What does this say about Georgia's place, not just in the mind of Democrats, but really the whole country now when it comes to our electoral future?
I think that it says that the debate has been settled and that Georgia is one of America's newest battleground states. I think it also says that there is an acknowledgement, a recognition that the reason that the Biden administration is within grasp of making progress on its agenda is due to Black voters and voters in Georgia not only showing up in November, but making history by sending Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff to Washington, D.C. When we think that there are over 60 bills that have been passed by a margin of less than 2 votes, like the story, the narrative, the impact of Georgia voters is continuing to show up throughout their legislative agenda.
And I want to follow up with this because literally, I mean, like most places, we make the argument all the time, hey, your vote matters, your vote matters. But literally, there are people in Georgia who have a $1,400 check. They got that stimulus check because of the senators that they put in. So is that something that resonates? Like when you guys are door knocking and organizing now, are people saying, yo, my vote got me this $1,400? Or does it still seem sort of an abstract concept when you're talking to people on the ground?
No, first of all, I want to flag that 85% of American families got that stimulus check, not just us in Georgia.
Well, yes.
And I think that, A, but also B, I think that, yes, there is that recognition, particularly for the folks that were born in 2002 and voted for the first time in these elections. They watched the entire country sort of, make bad parodies of Georgia on My Mind and talk about how important their vote was specifically. And so, as a long-term electoral organizer and a community organizer, this is the number one question that we sort of message around and talk to young people about is the power of their vote. And we have real live examples that hit people in their wallets, in their hearts, and in their minds. And so I think the conversations have gotten a lot easier. And quite frankly, the backlash that we are living through, that we are experiencing, also talks about how critical voting is in every election.
So, Aaron, I want to ask you this. I'm going to play a mashup of sort of the GOP responses to President Biden's speech last night. And I want your thoughts on the other side.
America heard a lengthy liberal daydream. We heard about the so-called jobs plan packed with punitive tax hikes at exactly the time our nation needs a recovery.
The president gives a nice talk about unity, but then he doesn't, there's no unity. Unity for him is we Republicans just agree to spend and spend and spend.
Just saying we're going to spend $1 trillion on this doesn't mean you care more. It means you're going to spend more of other people's money, taxpayer money, and run up the debt.
So, Aaron, we just talked about the value of stimulus checks to millions of Americans who were hurting during this pandemic, millions of Americans who still don't have jobs. Is this sort of GOP messaging that, you know, giving people money and financially supporting people is bad? Is that going to be a resonant message, or are they pretty much just talking to their own people as usual?
Well, this is certainly among kind of the red meat topics that Republicans tell, you know, to their base. But this is, you know, an administration that in the first 100 days has really worked to redefine the definition of bipartisanship and what that means in this country, right? Like for their money, they are not focused necessarily on the Republicans in Congress who maybe don't want to get on board with the president's plan. The Biden-Harris administration is instead kind of emphasizing that there are people of both political parties who support, or no political party that support a lot of kind of the details of what he is trying to do, and frankly, some of the things that he has tried to deliver. I mean, look, President Biden, you know, after he and the First Lady were down in Plains, I mean, that rally was in Gwinnett County, right, which is not, you know, somewhere that has been traditionally thought of as a Democratic stronghold. And you know, I think that also sends a message. You know, he said when he was elected that he was going to be president for everybody, whether they voted for him or not, and that includes Republicans, many of whom are supportive of a lot of these issues, whether you're talking about caregiving, whether you're talking about certainly, you know, those stimulus checks and support for folks who are out of work, that, you know, those folks are in red states and blue states. And you know, today was really just yet another opportunity to remind people of that.
And Aaron, the other thing that seems to occur to me is when I hear those criticisms, it speaks to this larger problem that I think Republicans have been having in really landing a punch on Joe Biden, right? Barack Obama, they could scream, he's black, you know, basically. With Bill Clinton, they can say, he's Slick Willie. You know, there were other ways that you could attack previous Democratic presidents. But why do you think Republicans have had such difficulty? I mean, other than saying the guy is giving you money when you're broke, they can't seem to land a real punch on Joe Biden.
Well, I mean, you know, when you are delivering things that Americans want, you know, it is kind of hard to make the argument. And you know, with him, frankly, yes, being a male of a certain age in politics, you know, it is a little harder to you know, kind of make contrasts, especially in the culture wars that Republicans are so, you know, bent on continuing here as an election strategy and to really galvanize members of their base. But listen, you know, Joe Biden is somebody who, you know, the guy from Scranton who, you know, hasn't, you know, appeals to folks, you know, in the heartland and in the Rust Belt and everywhere in between, people who, you know, may be open to his message just because of the identity that he has, regardless of the party that they are in. And again, like, you know, he talked about, you know, the need for gun reform, right, for example. Didn't want to offend anybody and trying to have that conversation. You know, the way that he comes at things, his delivery, I think, is something that folks may be more receptive to. And so that is certainly that delivery is something that is stymieing Republicans, at least in these early days.
Right. So, Adrian, Aaron brings up a good point. The idea that, you know, most people are receptive to what Joe Biden is talking about. I want to show this montage here of just how receptive or not receptive Republicans are to a lot of things that Joe Biden was saying last night.
It's time to grow the economy from the bottom and the middle out. American Jobs Plan creates jobs replacing 100% of the nation's lead pipes and service lines, so every American can drink clean water. We need to protect the sacred right to vote. It's time for corporate America and the wealthiest 1% of Americans to just begin to pay their fair share. Just their fair share. We're on track to cut child poverty in America in half this year.
Adrian, I have to ask you, it's like I get certain policy things that Republicans sit for, but like ending child poverty, they don't clap. You know, Joe Biden could have said, hey, we're going to stop clubbing baby seals. They wouldn't clap for that. What is the strategy of a party that seems to just want to say no, even for policies that polling-wise seem to be universally popular?
Well, Jason, I think that montage that you just showed right there literally sums up the Republican Party today. There's a bunch of people out there who, their constituents want this. We know, we've seen polling from the Biden administration and from various news organizations that have shown that a majority of Americans, including a majority of Republicans, support what Joe Biden has done so far in his first 100 days and support what he laid out last night in his speech. But yet you cannot get basically one Republican in the House and Senate to support it, even though that is what their constituents want. And I think Aaron made a really smart point earlier, which is how the Biden administration is redefining what bipartisanship is. It doesn't mean that, just because you can't get any of these representatives in Congress who are Republicans to support your legislation doesn't mean that it's bipartisan, because it is supported by a majority of the American people, including Democrats, Republicans, and independents. So, again, I think it sums up exactly what the problem is with the Republican Party these days, and also sums up how popular this legislation is and why Biden and his cabinet are going out and selling it.
It seems crazy to me that we have a Republican Party where more of them voted to impeach Trump a second time than clapped for ending childhood poverty. Thank you, Aaron Haynes, Insay Ufad, and Adrian Elrod. Thank you so very much this evening.